जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी, गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, यशोदनन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना, यशोदनन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना, यमुनतीरा वनचारि, यमुनतीरा वनचारि, जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी, जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, यशोदनन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना, यशोदनन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना, यमुनतीरा वनचारि, यमुनतीरा वनचारि, जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी, जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, यशोदनन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना, यशोदनन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना, यशोदानन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना, यशोदानन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना, यशोदानन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना, यशोदानन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना, यमुनतीरा वनचारि, यमुनतीरा वनचारि, जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी, प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद, जय जय प्रभुपाद, जय जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद, प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद। जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तष्ट हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरण अरविंद भक्ति वेदांता स्वामी शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। Jayam Vishnupada Paramhamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashtotastat His Divine Grace Shishya and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, chapter 24, verse number 42. Ratam sa ashthito maunam atmaika sharano muni nishango vyacharachonim anagnir aniketanaha. Vratam sa ashthito maunam atmaika sharano muni nisango vyacharachonam anagnir aniketanaha. Vratam sa ashthito maunam atmaika sharano muni nisango vyacharachonim anagnir aniketanaha. Synonyms: Vratam vow, Saha he Kardama, Asthitaha accepted, Maunam silence, Atma by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Eka exclusively, Sharana being sheltered, Muni the sage, Nisanga without association, Vecharat he travelled, Shonim the earth, Anagni without fire, Aniketanaha without shelter. Translation purport by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The sage Kadamba Muni accepted silence as a vow in order to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and take shelter of Him exclusively. Without association, he travelled over the surface of the globe as a sannyasi. Without association, he travelled over the surface of the globe as a sannyasi, devoid of any relationship with fire or shelter. Okay, but what is divine grace? Srila Prabhupada. Here the words anagnir, aniketanaha are very significant. A sannyasi should be completely detached from fire and any residential quarters. A grihastha has a relationship with fire either for offering sacrifices or for cooking, but a sannyasi is freed from these two responsibilities. He does not have to cook or offer fire for sacrifice because he is always engaged in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he has already accomplished all ritualistic performances of religion. Aniketanaha means without lodging or without a house. He should not have his own house, but should depend completely on the Supreme Lord for his food and lodging. He should travel. Mauna means silence. Unless one becomes silent, he cannot think completely about the pastimes and activities of the Lord. It is not that because one is a fool and cannot speak nicely, he therefore takes the vow of Mauna. Rather, one becomes silent so that people will not disturb him. It is said by Chanakya Pandit that a rascal appears very intelligent as long as he does not speak. But speaking is a test. The so-called silence of a silent impersonalist Swami indicates that he has nothing to say. He simply wants to beg. But the silence adopted by Kardama Muni was not like that. He became silent for relief from nonsensical talk. One is called a Muni when he remains grave and does not talk nonsense. Ambarish Maharaj set a very good example. Whenever he spoke about the pastimes of the Lord. Mauna necessitates refraining from nonsensical talking and engaging the talking facility in the pastimes of the Lord. In that way, one can chant and hear about the Lord in order to perfect his life. Vratam means that one should take a vow as explained in Bhagavad Gita. Amanitvam, adambhitvam. Without hankering for personal respect and without being proud of one's material position. Once again, Vrata means that one should take a vow as explained in Bhagavad Gita. Amanitvam, adambhitvam. Dambha is pride and man is uh, respect. Amanitvam, adambhitvam, without hankering for personal respect and without being proud of one's material position. Ahimsa means not being violent. There are 18 processes for attaining knowledge and perfection, and by this vow, Kadava Muni adopted all the principles of self-realization. Okay. Om Agyantimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsham श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं शं हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौरांगी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्ता स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरम्. Once again, the translation: the sage Kardama accepted silence as a vow in order to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and taken shelter of him exclusively. Without association, he traveled over the surface of the globe as a sannyasi, devoid of any relationship with fire or shelter. Very beautiful purport by Srila Prabhupada. Just in the previous verse was the last instance of meeting of Kardama Muni with his son Kapila Muni, Kapila Dev, Kapila Muni. Kapila Muni, he told Kardama Muni that now I will take care of your mother, and he blessed Kardama Muni that you will always be able to remember me constantly. Kardama Muni earlier itself was could remember the Lord constantly, and now Kapila Muni blessed him. So he renounced his family life, and placed his wife Devahuti under the care of his grown-up son. um, and he took sannyas. He took vow silence. Prabhupada describes vow of silence is very important if you want to remember Krishna. Um, and Prabhupada says whenever one speaks about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then Prabhupada describes very beautifully. He gives a definition for vow. It was very nice. Prabhupada says he became silent for relief from nonsensical talk. One is called a Muni if he remains grave and does not talk nonsense. Ambarish Maharaj example, he spoke about only about the glorification of the Lord. Yes, Vratam means that one should take a vow as explained in Bhagavad Gita, amanitvam, adambitvam, without hankering for personal respect and without being proud of one's material position. This is, I mean, just yesterday we were discussing, there are many obstacles in the path of devotional service. One of them is inappropriate speaking. That is a great obstacle. To overcome that obstacle, I mean, Rupa Goswami says one should tolerate the urge to speak. Um, and that begins with whatever one is speaking, one is very cautious, one is very careful. And that sign of mode of goodness also, mode of goodness is described as we think before speaking, and mode of passion is described as we think after speaking. So once we speak, then you're like, oh, why did I say that? I should not have said that. So that internal silence is helpful to be careful with the words that we use, because lot of devotional service, lot of difficulties in devotional service is because of the words that we use. So one has to be very careful. Kadam Muni, he actually took a vow silence. Um, then another here is amanitva. Two things that are coming to my mind. One is how if one is not, this is very, very difficult actually, to not expect respect for oneself. To not expect respect for oneself if one, basically it is um, desire for fame. To not expect respect for oneself. It is a very subtle desire, desire for fame. If one my spiritual master says, if one has this desire for fame, then one will never be peaceful. One cannot become peaceful. Raghunath Das Goswami describes there are various obstacles. In Manasiksha, he describes there are various obstacles, and one by one, he gives a clear understanding of what those obstacles are, and how one can overcome those obstacles. So first, Raghunath Das Goswami describes from uh, fifth, sixth, seventh, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh verses, 4 verses he described. He says the first set of obstacles are pride, um, envy, lust, greed, anger. He describes these as the first set of obstacles, and he says we can overcome these first set of obstacles by um, taking shelter of devotees, calling out to devotees, revealing our mind to devotees, taking blessings from devotees. And Prabhupada also says by constantly being engaged, whether it is work, whether it is whatever we are doing, by constantly engaged. Free time is dangerous. And also we see Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu says like determination, that I will not do anything unconducive for my Krishna consciousness. So, I mean, once we have devotees' blessings, the first stage we overcome is we overcome these as per Raghunath Goswami. Then, second set of obstacles are duplicity and diplomacy, hypocrisy, duplicity and diplomacy. Duplicity is also very dangerous. It is very subtle because um, one can use Krishna consciousness to satisfy one's um, personal motives, personal desires, everything in the name of diplomacy, like or duplicity. Um, Basically, one wants to remain blind. One don't want to accept one's fault, one's shortcomings, and one wants to justify one's shortcomings by um, believing that this is allowed in Krishna consciousness. So this is very subtle. Being honest means we see, oh, I am being overtaken. Even when one is duplicitous, then um, one even tries to deal with devotees or justify one's action. Everything one does in Krishna conscious way, but internally one knows that I have an ulterior motive in that. Uh, or one one even tells oneself that this is bhakti, this is devotional service. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also says when one takes to Krishna consciousness, one should be very careful. He must become an expert gardener. And he says, expert gardener is as we water the bhakti lata, the weeds will also grow. And one should be very careful not to water the weeds, because if one water the weeds, then the weeds will become stronger and stronger and stronger, and that will choke the bhakti lata. And he says he says that the Mahaprabhu says the weeds looks exactly like the bhakti lata, same shape, same size, and it is very difficult to distinguish between what is bhakti lata and what are weeds. And then Mahaprabhu says these weeds are unlimited in number. And then Mahaprabhu says a pure devotee of the Lord is expert at distinguishing the weeds from the bhakti lata. And a pure devotee of Lord never waters the weeds. The nature of weeds is if we water the weeds, they become stronger. And the tendency to water them again will increase, and one keep on watering the weeds, and one will not see significant progress in one's spiritual life. That's why Mahaprabhu says one should become an expert gardener. In one of the lecture, my spiritual master mentioned Gita Nagari, most of us are watering the weeds. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says there are many weeds. Among them, he describes 6. I don't know if I can remember all of them, but one of them is Kutinati. I think Nishidachar Jiva Himsa Kutinati. Kutinati is duplicity, diplomatic, where one wants to, in a Krishna conscious way, one wants ulterior motives. That is Kutinati. Okay. And then that after one overcomes, it's actually very, very difficult to overcome. And most of the time we can't even see. Actually, it's we try to be blind to ourselves. We try to cheat ourselves. This is the nature of the mind. This is the nature of material energy, that it is so subtle. And that's where the association, hearing, the discussion by our Gurudev, spiritual master Srila Prabhupada, that helps to identify those weeds, because by ourselves very very difficult to see them. But then when we take guidance, or when we um, hear, we should take guidance, we should hear with an open mind. If we take guidance with the perspective of I want them to support what I want to do, then then again we are cheating ourselves. So after this um, diplomacy and hypocrisy, then next is fame. And how do we overcome diplomacy and hypocrisy? Raghunath Das Goswami says, absorb in the beautiful pastimes of Lord Krishna. Because diplomacy comes when we want to enjoy separate from Krishna, and that is the root cause of our existence here. But when we are satisfied only with hearing about Krishna and chanting Krishna's name, and when we try to relish on a spiritual platform, then these things it will be easy to give up. That's what Lord Krishna also says, Param Drishtu Anivartate. So one should try to go deeper into the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Raghunath Goswami says there. And then the third thing and the last thing that comes is a desire for fame. This is actually a very, very, very deep-rooted desire. And this is actually amanitva. Now it is very easy to say, Trinadapi Sunichena, Taroriva Sahishnuna, Amani Namana Dena Kitanya Sadahari. Among them, my spiritual master says most difficult is amanina, is not expecting respect for oneself. And it is so deep rooted that it is very difficult to analyze them also. And only as we if Krishna reveals, then we realize, oh, how much stronger is this desire, how much strong is this anartha of expecting respect for oneself, man. And then once, because we want respect or we want man, because we want to keep ourselves in the center. As long as we are in the center, then we look for our pleasure, and we give up external pleasures. We follow regulatory principles. So then we want to enjoy subtly. But there is still, as long as this desire is there, one cannot do anything for pleasing Krishna. Usually it's a very advanced stage where one actually tries to please Krishna. One time, Malti Prabhu came and she gave a class in Sunday feast, and the whole class he spoke on only one aspect, try to please Krishna. So I was telling Shyam Krishna Prabhu, this is a very high class. Like uh, to speak 1 hour only on to be able to please Krishna, it's very, very difficult, because we are full of ourselves and we are too much conscious and too deep rooted. That's what Srila Prabhupada says. Srila Prabhupada says, calls us conditioned soul, because we are conditioned um, to enjoy either gross or subtle matter. And this all comes because of ahankar. But because ahankar is so subtle, it's very difficult to see the ahankar from the mind and intellect also, because it's subtler than mind and intellect. So only by Krishna's mercy, Krishna reveals at a spiritual level, we can see ahankar there. But very difficult to do anything to please Krishna, whether it is to do kirtan to please Krishna. Many times we are unavoidably um, um, driven by this desire of keeping ourselves in the center. But when the mercy of Lord descends, those who can do everything, all devotional service for the pleasure of Krishna, that those aspect of devotional service is pure devotional service. After these things goes away, then pure devotional service starts. Pure devotional service means I am doing it for the pleasure of the Lord. And their duplicity can actually cheat us also. that I am doing it for the pleasure of the Lord. This false ego is so nice. I mean, not nice, but it's so strong that it can turn and tweak us in any way we won't even realize, just because it is so subtle within us. And we want to come to the point of uh, um, um, pure devotional service. The first stage is, that's why it is said, being sincere. Being sincere, one aspect of being sincere means being introspective, being careful of one's own desire. That's being sincere. Um, Being honest, um, um, and then identify, okay, what all are there, what all I need to work on. Gradually, one by one, apply the solution that helps to overcome those. Pray to Krishna. Krishna, um, through this aspect, I want to please you only. Krishna, please, um, let this let this external desire for doing things for myself goes away, and let all my actions be motivated only to please you. Let all the desire, because these desires can be, I mean, when they are motivated by subtle desire, it all becomes mixed, mixed devotional service. Then, like, okay, we are trying to serve Krishna, and then we are keeping ourselves in the center while serving Krishna. And it is also described, although we may try, we won't be able to come out of it um, till we qualify ourselves till a particular stage of devotional service. So it is mentioned that Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur describes, this is the last thing I will say. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur describes, um, there is like I, me, my consciousness, Janna Samoyam Ahamamiti, and Krishna conscious is doing everything for the pleasure of Krishna. It is such a relief if our consciousness can have that revolution, can have that transformation, that anything we do it for the pleasure of Krishna. It's such a blissful state of consciousness. I mean, just the thought, if I can do everything for the pleasure of Krishna, it's so beautiful. It's so attractive, this thought that whatever I do, I'm doing it to please Krishna. But the thing is, there is a very, very strong conditioning, which knowingly and unknowingly will be like pulled out. Like my mother used to say, I mean, this is, I'm sure many have heard, कि in Hindi वो बोलते हैं कि, please forgive me for saying this, it's little blunt, but uh, कि makes the point clear, कि जो कुत्ते की पूंछ होती है हमेशा टेढ़ी होती है. आप जितना भी उसको सीधा करने की कोशिश करो, how much ever you make an attempt to make the tail of a dog straight, it will again turn. It cannot be like straight in one line. So this I compare to conditioning, is even after hearing, even after bathing our consciousness with what is pure devotional service, what is mixed devotional service, the next moment we'll go to mixed devotional service. Because like Prabhupada says, like we are helpless living entities. Only the mercy of the Lord can give us that transformation, can give us that relief from being conscious of I and mine. It's not really dependent upon I mean, it's not up to us. With our intellect, we cannot make progress really. Yes, we can be sincere, we can pray. That's how we use our free will. Ultimately, our purity is based on chanting the holy names, Chetodarpana Marjana. And through the medium of holy names, the descent of Krishna's mercy can free us from um, from these thoughts. And when we are actually freed, then humbleness will also come. Like true humility will also arise. And then Kirtanya Sadahari will also come. And then Nadhanam, Najana, Sundari will be natural. So I was mentioning about Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur how the difference is when we say na dhanana janana sundarim, we are like, yeah, I don't want, I really don't want. But then our conditioning is like that. Then we want maybe some fame or whatever it is, especially the subtle matter we want. Like Yogi Prabhuji says, the first thing to give up is dhanam. The second thing to give up is uh, sundarim, and the last thing to give up is janam, which is basically fame. And that's what Raghunath Das Goswami says, the subtlest thing and the last thing to go. And Prabhupada very beautifully describes here, he says, Vratam means one should take a vow. Vratam means one should take a vow of amanitvam and adambitvam. That's why becoming pure devotee is such a relief. And the concept itself is so attractive because we are just freed from um, all these things that make us conscious about me. And then so much anxiety, full of anxiety. Yes, so I just keep deviating. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says at this, I mean, this is a very advanced stage that just makes me understand that how I cannot attain that stage artificially. So he says at the stage of Nishtha, we still do everything. Maybe 99% we are still conscious of I, me, and mine only. But we are very stable. But then the concept of me being in the center is very, very prominent. And he says when we come to stage of Ruchi, then also uh, I, me, my consciousness is pervasive, but it is little weak. Maybe balance. Mostly I do for myself. And I mean, maybe 50-50, but still it is pervasive. He uses the word pervasive. I, my consciousness, and doing everything for Krishna's pleasure is there increasingly in much more than the stage of Nishtha. And it says Ashakti, when we are deeply attached to Krishna, then I, me, my consciousness will weaken and it will become sparse. And doing everything for Krishna's pleasure is pervasive. And that makes perfect sense also because uh, when we are very much attached to our children, then we are very conscious of where they are, what they are doing, remembering them. And then, like the mothers, especially when children are very small, the mothers don't care about themselves, wake up sleeping late, maybe whole night no sleep, and they are doing so much for their children. That's because they're attached to their children, which is natural. So when one is attached, one can do a lot of sacrifices on oneself, and one is not concerned while taking care of the child, what will I get from it? Or keeping myself in the center, because one is so attached to the children that one is willing to stretch oneself, extend, or give up one's own comfort. The mother can go sparing in one's own eating and recreation, can even go against society or what people say for the sake of children. Why? Attachment is there. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that this stage of Ashakti, which is when we are actually attached to Krishna, this is a very advanced stage to become attached to Krishna. He says the first stage comes is to become attached to the holy name. At that time also attachment to Krishna is not there. Attachment to Krishna means you're attached to personality of Krishna. He says stage of Ruchi, our attachment is to the process. At the stage of Ashakti, our attachment is to the object of the process. At Ruchi, the attachment is to the process. At Ashakti, the attachment is to the object of the process, which is we're directly attached to Krishna. And that's when one can feel Vipralambha, and that will help us to go to the next level. I mean, this is all theory for me. But what I'm trying to say is this stage of becoming free from desire for fame and leaving us out of the center, it really will come at its own time by our spiritual progress. But if you're not, I mean, so the whole idea is one should be goal driven, that this is where I want to go. Um, it is described that when we are driven by a goal, then we will work hard in this direction. Like so many people are working so hard for a particular position, for a particular post in the company, because they have a goal. I want to become a manager or senior manager, and then they work so hard, and they achieve the goal. Likewise, if you're practicing bhakti without the goal in mind, where I want to go, where I am, what is the next stage I want to achieve, how do I achieve, and do I do the right sadhana to achieve that? Am I working in that direction? Am I working towards the goal? If we are not, then we'll become lukewarm. If we are driven by the goal, I need to get there, I need to get there, and then we want to be self-driven to attain that goal, to get there, because it's not going to happen. It's not an overnight process. Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is a gradual process of purification. But it is very scientific, Prabhupada says, because the various stages are analyzed by uh, previous acharyas. And one should aspire for the next stage of devotion instead of saying that, yes, I want prema. I mean, first let's work on what is the next goal, what is the next obstacle. It's step by step by step only we make progress. um, in material world also, people make gradual um, steps they want to take, and the next step and the next step, and they have a goal in mind. Likewise, we have a goal in mind, but we are working in the next step and the next step. Okay, so that's what uh, I could share today. If there any discussion, we can take now.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Sri Prabhupada and Gurudev. Prabhu, this is very wonderful class, especially explaining those six shortcomings in our spiritual life, starting with Kutinati. I was just remembering one aspect which I heard from my Shiksha Guru back in Pune. And this aspect I never knew, so I'm just adding, and please feel free to comment on it. Is he said Kutinati is also like, expecting favor from other devotees. For an example, Prabhu, can you get me a glass of water? Can you get me my prasadam plate or something like that? So that is actually a mentality of, you know, utilizing your position. And again, position is from a material perspective, I'm saying, but again, using that thought process at the spiritual platform, or what, I've been in bhakti for so many years, so I want to ask favor from other devotees who are new or something like that. That is one point which I remember, and I just wanted to add on that, Prabhu.
Thank you. Seems like you're speaking to me. Thank you.
It's for me, Prabhu.
Okay.
I also like the point which you talked about, especially sharing. Sometimes, at least if I think about myself, I just go into that um, dead zone, or this is not going, this is not going, and you realize, but when you gave that clarity, saying that even to a higher stages of bhakti, these things are still lurking. That gives me a hope. Not that I should be careless to think that, oh no, I can continue my nonsense, but actually that gives some hope that, yeah, I'm not a pure devotee yet, and it's a long way to go there. And then I have to get through all these steps, like especially you talked about. When you talk about Krishna Prema, feeling separation, that's a high stage. Let's cover the kindergarten first. Thank you for that point.
Well, I just repeated what I read, Prabhu. That's all. And as I said, it's a theory for completely, but it's inspiring. It's motivating, um, and it gives a desire. Like Shivram Maharaj says, if you know what's out there, if you have a clarity of where we want to be and what it's like to be there, then it just creates an inspiration. Oh, I want to get there. So he says that's why even if you're not there, hearing about it is helpful, just inspirational. It drives us forward. Yeah, so just share, Prabhu. Okay. Is there anything else? Okay. All right. Thank you very much all for joining. If I spoke anything wrong, please forgive me as a humble servant. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranam.
Syamanand Krishna Prabhu ki jai. Thank you
Ananta
so much.
Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Dandavat.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.